Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everybody.
All right, this is episode number 371. I'm just trying to keep count of this particular version. So we are slogging along.
There you go.
Speaking
It's
of
not
slogging,
a slog. It's a lot of fun.
it's been quite a ride, though. I mean, it's like, I do remember. See, I'm trying to remember how far back we really went when we were in the old AIM office, and I mean, I know we did some stuff. What was it, like 2016, right? And probably a little bit before that, because I mean, we were, we were even talking about Theresa May and snap elections and stuff like that. So it goes back one. There was a brief hiatus, and then I got invited to do something else before that network got banned for some sketchy things on Facebook, which they had an audience, that right-wing news thing.
Yeah, that's the thing I've always regretted about that. Is like, as scummy as they were, man, a lot of people watched.
Thousands of people. I do get somewhat wistful about that. It's just that, they knew how to game the system or whatever, but Facebook no more, and people were left. I mean, the internet has developed, and people are finding lots of other things to watch, and it's, I don't know, as many people watch stuff on, say, Facebook versus YouTube and things like that, and podcasts have gone, from a lot of audio, which I still listen to, but a lot of the audio podcasts are also done in video. They've added a video component. I mean, one of my favorite podcasts is Baseball Tonight with Buster Olney, and about 2 months ago they started broadcasting on YouTube, and YouTube became their audience in the sense of that's what drives them, and everything. So instead of saying thanks for listening, they say thanks for watching. So I mean, YouTube is a monster with all of this. So not that we get a lot of views, but that's pretty much where we get most of our views in the end, except for Bob when he's being faithful out there wherever he is, from week to week.
Bob watched last week and didn't comment, I don't think.
Well,
but I know he watched because he knew what we had talked about. So
he knew what we talked about. Okay. Well, anyway, so it is also National Vinyl Record Day. Interesting. I mean, I could have chosen one of the other days, but this, I'm not a middle child, so I threw that one out. But the vinyl record, I mean, I was all about vinyl records when I was a teenager and young adult. Before
I owned hundreds of vinyl records.
I still have vinyl records.
I had the 45s. I still have a few around here too. Yeah. I had the 45s. I had, single on each side, 33s. My brother had like bookcases full of vinyl albums. He had all kinds of stuff too. He paid $400 one time for an album that was it was the original box set of the Meher Baba albums that the Who made. They got into Meher Baba at some point, and they did this box set of albums devoted to that, and it's really good. The stuff is really, the music is really good. And then they sort of got out of that stage, and of course they have there's some remnants of it. The Baba O'Reilly, the song everybody, Teenage Wasteland, came out of that. So and he had all these records and stuff, and like when he died, like the people that came to the funeral and spoke the night before or whatever, they're all like, yeah, he taught me about music, and he did it through these vinyl records. You going over to his house, he put some records on, and you listen to music. That was just the way he lived. So yeah, it brings back a lot of memories, and music was definitely better then, sounded better. That stuff pouring through. This other thing is, like, I see these, they've done a pretty good job with it, but I see these like Fire Sticks. And like my son has a speaker that's about the size of a fist, right? And he puts a Bluetooth through it, and he has a little speaker, you know, and they do a pretty good job in terms of the sound, but it's just like the big, heavy depth you got out of records through a big, huge cabinet speaker. You know, it's just the best sound ever. Just goes through you, gets in you, stays in you. So yeah, vinyl records is a big part of my life. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a fair amount of money, creating a sound setup, going to a high-end store to find the right equipment, speakers, turntable,
Yeah,
receiver,
yeah, tuner,
all
all
kinds
that
of
stuff.
stuff, and you know, and nowadays, people we've kind of gravitated towards, quick and easy because, you have music is so digital now, so that's a lot of sound compression. So you're not going to get the richness and the fullness, and vinyl records got, they had their criticism back in the day because, you kind of get the snaps and the crackles and stuff like that. But there has been a revival of that, right? I mean,
Oh
there's,
yeah,
and everything like that. And so, yeah, I mean, I swear, I don't even, there's somewhere around here, there's still the old albums. So I split my time buying albums from Columbia House Records and Kemp Mill Record Shop were probably
yeah.
the two biggest places. I spent far too much money at both of those places, just buying almost everything I could, not being overly discerning in terms of what I chose. Anything from, from soul music to maybe sometimes a few country things in there, and a lot of soft pop, and then hard rock, and so
Yeah.
it's a kind of an eclectic set of music I've got. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I guess my kids will just get it and they'll decide what to do with it.
There was a guy. There was a record store in Shreveport called Suto, Sooto, and man, they had everything. They introduced me to so much different music, and you'd go in there, and the guy he knew everybody in Shreveport, and he guided you to like, this should be your next thing. If you were buying that, you should now buy this. And it wasn't just a sales pitch. It was a guy, leading you on a musical journey, and I know if there's any Shreveport people out there watching, you can hear about this because we all gave that guy a lot of money. We all we all went in that store and bought a lot of records, and there's nothing wrong with that. Those were good records, good,
And it's
and
kind
it's like at one point I was buying up jazz like Ron Carter and George Clinton and jazz players, right? And when I was buying those records, a lot of those records were like $2, $1.88 or whatever. And then, they're now, $20 or $30, records. It's like really taken off, because like people are looking back and go, wow, that Ron Carter was pretty darn good, which he was, so, it's like what I have now is like, I wish I could find my baseball cards because, I didn't collect them. Like I'm going to sell these and get rich later one day, I just had a bunch of cards and I looked at them and looked at the stats and enjoyed having the cards, and they're all in a box somewhere. And I wish I could find that box because, now, I was doing this in the 70s, so the late 60s, early 70s. So some of those cards are going to be hard to find, right? And they might be in demand. I haven't kept them, in a little plastic sleeve and all that. So you wouldn't get the big bucks because they're not in what they call pristine condition. But that's it, like stuff out of our childhood that's like, it's not really there as much anymore.
Yeah. So two more things on this before we move to the real news, which is one, when you talk about like a local record store, uh, it does kind of remind me of the local bookstores where the same thing. If you had a local bookstore and the right people, they would also kind of help you give recommendations on things. It wasn't just kind of the mass factory that it had become over the years. It was a very personal thing, just a very cozy spot, and people who knew things, and books stacked around there, or even the used bookstores. It's just kind of one of those old timey things that goes on there. Baseball cards, great love of mine as a kid, collected them, did the whole Topps bubble gum thing, and everything like that. Bought a lot of those. But I, as a kid, the one thing that always frustrated me was that it was basically impossible for you to buy your way through bubblegum packs to collect, number one, to number like 726 or whatever the top number was that particular year. But it was somewhere in that 600, 700 range, right? And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And so when I got a little bit older, I went ahead, even, I still had the cards of mix and match and stuff like that I had, but I went and I started looking around and I bought complete sets to catch up, and I started with 1968. I don't even know why I started in 1968. I actually went back and spent several $100s on a 1968 complete set. And then I stopped. My last set that I bought was 1985, the year I got married. But those earlier years, like that, we're talking about having, Nolan Ryan rookie cards and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I have a Nolan Ryan rookie
just,
card, a
just
Cal
the,
Ripken
just,
rookie card.
just the one card of having people like that in a set makes the value of the set skyrocket. So they're sitting in my closet. They're sitting in a box that was made for baseball cards. And I keep saying, I'm going to turn them over to an auctioneer or something like that and just let them take care of it and do it, because my kids they don't really care about any of that stuff anyway. But
Right.
I know I think the 68 set, at the real peak of baseball card collecting was worth well over $1,000 alone, that because of the cards that were in there, because he still had towards the end of Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays's careers, all
Yeah.
those kinds of things in there. You think about that, Tom Seaver. So it was, it was an interesting time. And but through bubblegum collecting and everything like this, I did wind up with the Washington Padres. I have a lot of Washington Padres
Yeah.
cards. So though I know those are worth something, because it's one of the, it's like stamps or things like that. It's an error, Topps
Yeah.
has to print them far in advance to get them out for the season. They thought the Padres were moving to Washington. Didn't happen, but they had all these players wearing Washington Padres caps, so those cards became kind of collectibles. So it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting to see all the different iterations of things that have gone on in our lifetime. All right, enough of that. Um, War with Iran. Trump says the Strait of Hormuz is open. Iran is dragging their feet and saying it's not, disputing all of that. But I think things are. I mean, they're in a better shape than they have been overall. There's been a little bit of pullback, I guess, from the stock market because they're not sure exactly where we're going there. But gas prices seem to have stabilized a little bit for right now. They're kind of in a little bit
Come
of a
down a little
range.
bit. Looks
Yeah,
like they're
they came down.
solidly below 4 now in most places.
Yeah, it depends upon where you're going, and um, I went
Most
ahead
places
and
around here, I should say.
yeah, and right,
Uh,
and everything's localized. I mean, I saw somebody post something about from a gas station in Utah, which the gas was running like 450. But Utah has been like that. They always
right.
are. They're always higher. Um, just like they they mimic California, but they're about a buck and a half cheaper or something.
Yeah.
Uh, and yet it's one of those things that if you drive through part of Utah, you see refineries there, right? You can smell it, you can see it, but it depends on where you're shipping the gas and the flow and everything else that's going. And
Running those
so
trucks over mountains is a thing, right? Liquid's heavy. One of the heaviest loads you can carry is stuff like gasoline. Water is really a heavy load for a truck. So yeah, it's they're always going to have delivery problems out there. My cousin from Lake Charles told me that it was like 325, 330 a gallon there. I haven't been there, so can't verify. But a lot of the places along the south, when we were driving down there, was in the 350 range, so 350, 360. So
yeah, so
that was a while ago. That was early July. So
right, so I mean, so 7-Eleven has been a part of my life since I was a kid, but off and on. I mean, when I was a little kid, I was at 7-Eleven a pretty fair amount, getting Slurpees. It wasn't terribly far away from my house. I could bike up there, and bike back home and stuff like that. Um, I don't really care for Slurpees all that much as an adult. Not really anything I really want to buy in there in general. I don't, because I've always considered it to be it's convenience, so they're going to charge you for the convenience. But I got sucked into their rewards program under some promotion, and now you know, I my wife insists on getting top tier gas and everything like that, but sometimes I'll top off a gas tank if they're giving a deal that beats the regular gas prices around, and they're running a promotion now, that does something like that. They I think it was 50 cents a gallon off on the 7th and the 11th of the month through October. So you join rewards for free. You've got a 7-Eleven with a gas pump. You just open up the app. You can even just pay from the app if you've got a credit card on file or Apple Pay or whatever, and then just you tell the pump number, it just sets it up, and you pump away, and then you just drive off. You can get a receipt at the pump. You get a receipt, in the app or whatever. I'm like, not that's pretty good. It's another convenience from 7-Eleven. I give them kudos for doing that, because if you're discounting your gas by an extra 50 cents, you're not making anything.
Yeah,
especially on the regular. So there are ways to kind of mitigate some of these higher costs if you
there's
really,
also
really
something.
can.
Have you seen this Freedom Fuel? Right?
Right,
Have
we
you seen
talked
any of those
about that a
stations?
few weeks ago. Yeah, right, which was up in Pennsylvania, and
Yeah, I
it
saw
had
some in Pennsylvania and Ohio, maybe. But yeah, like 15, 20, 30% less a gallon, a lot less,
yeah. So yeah, that's it's I mean, these things, there are attempts out there. We did get the CPI report out this morning, so inflation's at 2.5%, in line with expectations, down a tick from last month. So that's good news. The war in Iran is still unsettled to the extent that the prices will probably remain somewhat volatile, um, and some prices of goods are going up, some prices of goods are going down a little bit. Um, I mean, I can't I can't remember what the price was of one item to the next. Most of the time, I'm just, if something's on sale and I want it, I buy it. If it's not on sale, unless I really, really want it, I still skip it until then. But my wife is very sensitive. She knows the prices of beef. She actually found a slab of beef that we had bought from Amazon Fresh quite a while ago, in the freezer, and it was at $4.99 a pound, which is like, yeah, well, you can't touch that right now.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's just, I'm hoping that things will, get down to a little more normal sense there. But a lot depends on what we do in Iran. And, I've said before, when we've said before, kind of need to get this thing in our rearview mirror and wrap this thing up before the midterms, before any voting really starts taking effect. Because I think on the fringes, it can affect some of the voting for people who feel pressed. I mean, I heard a report today.
I think like the other thing that we're not hearing enough about here is, things in Iran are getting worse every day, right? And so I mean, they're headed toward breaking point as well. They announced this week that they're not going to pay pensions to any of these soldiers, right? So like people who are, they're drafting people our age, right, in their 50s and 60s, and forcing them to go fight the war, and then they're not going to pay them pensions, and like you're going to have, there's you're going that's the kind of move that starts a revolt, right? It gets people saying, I'm not going to fight, or I'm not going to fight very well, and it's just slow down soldiering for a while or whatever. So the pressures on them, there's more. It's more than just getting all their stuff bombed to smithereens. It's also like their economy is completely collapsed. Nobody can work. Nobody can make any money. They're not getting the oil revenues that they count on. So they've been cut off. I guess you saw there was a Panamanian flagged ship that was trying to run the blockade, and they ended up having to fire some missiles at it to get it to stop. So, you're not getting through the blockade. They're not selling 1 ounce of oil, right? They are stuck. So until they can get out of that vice, it's just a matter of time till they have to cry uncle.
Yeah, I mean, look, the government there doesn't care about the people, right? I mean,
Right.
right.
Right. They
So
I guess they killed another 20,000 or so in the last few days.
yeah, I
Dissidents.
mean they'll let their people suffer while they
Yeah.
continue to throw drones and missiles and things like this. But their backs are against the wall. I mean, to me, it just seems a matter of time before something has to give here because they just can't keep doing this. I mean, they're going to run out of people. They're going to run out of resources. You run out of money to buy the weapons, even the drones. Even though drones are less expensive than standard military, munitions. You still have to have money to pay for this stuff at some point in time, and if your economy is in shambles, you've got a real problem. So
Right.
there are definitely issues there that Iran has got to deal with, but they're stubbornly holding on, trying to make the U.S. cry uncle. I think like this, and Trump is not going to cry uncle. So
He's not going to cry. The Democrats keep saying, the Joe Kents of the world keep saying, it's time to cry uncle. We're not crying uncle, buddy.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So we had some interesting primaries yesterday. The results, I mean, I guess it depends on where. So we'll start with Wisconsin because there was so much attention, focused on that. You had the Democratic Socialist who had in the polls had a very comfortable lead. You had this, what is it, Milwaukee County executive? Is that what he was?
Mm-hmm.
And he jumped back into the race after the person they had been coalescing around, dropped out. And he won a razor thin, race there, but he beat this Hong woman, and she has conceded, the race. The Democrats are probably breathing a sigh of relief on the one hand. These things here. I
Big
don't know how
words and
much.
a sigh of belief.
Yeah, to me, I mean, some people in the media are talking about, the DSA, is, their progress is being slowed by the El Sayed. He kind of squeaked through, and now you've got Hung who lost and things like this. But I'm like, they still got a lot of votes. I mean, they were
Oh,
competitive. If they didn't win, she was darn competitive. She's made the Democrats sweat, and kind of and made their lives worse, for it. And we can, I mean, yeah, there were Republicans giving money to her campaign, which is
right.
I
Yeah.
love when
We're
this
starting to
happens.
do that at scale now. That's
Yeah,
kind of one of the little understories of this is we're
it's just
picking our opponents.
yeah, it's kind of funny when they do that, right? Because look, they're not going to have an impact unless you get like a Mercer family saying, "Well, we're going to really pump a lot of money in there," something like that. You need some big wigs, heavy hitter. But she was a disaster, and that whole thing about Thanksgiving, that didn't go well at all.
I think that's when they said we're going to pull the plug. And there's some evidence that the party kind of said we got to make sure that this comes out like it needs to come out. So she was like 22 points ahead in some of these polls. Like
Yeah,
to go, they miss polling misses sometimes. A lot of these guys had Harris winning the presidency 4, 5, 6 points. They were way off, but this is 20 points, 25 points. I mean, this is a
yeah,
big
she had this
miss.
comfortable lead. No, the Democrats were sweating bullets and just hoping and praying that somehow they would be able to beat her in this race, and they did. They managed to pull that off. Now they've got a short timeline to turn around and to try to win the seat. Try to win the governor's mansion. And I don't. That's not a guarantee. Wisconsin, it can go either way. Out there at this point. So, and they've been battered and bruised through this primary process. So it kind of, I don't know that there's a lot of love for this guy who won, but he's it's better than an alternative for the Democrats and gives them a better chance because Francisca Hung, if she had won, I think it was over for them for the governorship. So. Uh, so that's one thing the Democrats are hoping that they can cling to. Minnesota, that was interesting. I mean, I'm not sure the results turned out much different than we expected in certain things. The Mike Lindell lost his bid for the governor nomination. I don't know how many more times Mike Lindell is going to try to run for something. Um, I think he did a lot of damage to himself over the years, and I don't know how, I don't quite understand how people vote for him these days anyway. Um, and I guess it was the lieutenant. Well, what is she? She was the House leader, right? She was the House
Right.
Speaker.
Yeah.
So she has an interesting story, right? Because she was the Speaker. She brokered a deal because it was a deadlock. There were 67 Republicans, 67 Democrats. She brokered a deal to become the House Speaker. So she became like the first first Black House Speaker there in the Minnesota Senate. And it was in the House, and she's been around for a few years, but you know now they're going to have it's going to be a 2-woman race. I mean, she's facing lieutenant governor. No, wait a minute. She's facing Klobuchar. No, it's
Klobuchar,
Klobuchar.
yeah.
Klobuchar, right? So she's facing Klobuchar. So you got 2 women going there. But at least she seems to be conservative. When you can when you can rate it against Minnesota politics. So I don't know. I mean, Klobuchar's going to have money and she's going to have a lot of name recognition, but hopefully this individual gives her a run for her money a little bit, makes her spend some money. Um, and the Minnesota Senate race where Tina Smith is retiring, uh, that was a little bit of a free for all at first, but Michelle Tafoya just coasted. Um,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. I didn't really know her position except for the fact that Royce White spent a lot of time lately attacking her. So, but Royce was not going to have a chance to beat her. So he just went ahead and started throwing bombs at her, for which he was so far behind she could just ignore that. Um, so she came through. So I mean, she might have a chance. I don't know.
She
I
might
mean,
have a chance. Just fractured electorate. Obviously somebody's voting for these people on the other side. Minnesota's kind of like Virginia in that it looks like a solidly blue state, but it's really pretty close, right? And you get outside the metropolitan area and the college towns, it's a conservative state. So it does not guarantee victory, but in the case of the Senate race, Tafoya is going to have the name recognition advantage. Right. So she has a chance. It's not over for her.
yeah, and that would be an important flip if she can do that.
Yeah. The
'Cause,
governor is not gonna, they're not gonna beat Klobuchar. I think that,
yeah,
Mike Lindell says that they were worried about him, so they colluded to keep him out. I don't know if that's true. That's what he claims,
yeah,
but they're clearly not worried about her.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't think Lindell was a viable candidate, in the race anyway. I mean, he can give it a shot. Go ahead. This is America. You go ahead and try. You can go ahead and run, but
He won 2 counties. He finished somewhere in the low 30s.
yeah,
That's not a total
it's not a
washout.
train wreck for Minnesota. I mean, so yeah, it's trying to win that top spot in Minnesota is difficult. And yeah, Klobuchar, she's got plenty of name recognition, so I think she'll definitely be the next governor there. Um, but yeah, but it's interesting to see how these races, and then we had South Carolina, where you know Darlene Graham, couldn't win the majority, so she and Ralph Norman will have to go head to head. Um, I don't know. I don't know if that is a toss up or whatever. I don't. Is
She'll win.
you think
I
Darlene
think
is still going to come through?
I think she's going to come through.
It's,
And that doesn't bother me. What will she be in the Senate? She'll be a reliable Trump vote,
yeah.
right? And so, do we have enough people up there arguing with Trump? Spend all their time arguing with Trump.
So what's the argument against Ralph Norman?
He's 80 years old. He's not exceedingly popular. He's kind of a plodding politician anyway. So I'm fine with that if it ends up being Darlene.
He's 80 years old, man.
Something like that, high 70s at the least.
Yeah. Okay. It's okay. So I will that gives me a little pause because I mean the Senate you can stay there forever, but it's like when you're I probably don't get as excited about the House members that run and get into their 80s, but Senate members, considering that we have so few of them, as they get older, I get a little more concerned about their abilities and things like that. Though we have some that have done just fine on both sides, they're still fairly sharp. But
born in
if you're
53, what does that make him?
73. So he's still on the younger side, but that's still on the on the high side to run for Senate to me.
Yeah.
They really it's really something that I'd say if you're 50 or 60, that's that's a little more that's something I can do a little easier, because then I can think like, well, if you turn out to be good, you can serve 20 or 30 years, and you'll by the time you're done, you'll be like 80 something maybe. But if you're starting at 73, how many terms do you really have left?
Right, one, right, is the answer probably.
Yeah, I mean it's not
two at the outside,
right. Yeah, it's not likely you'll do more than a couple. And once again, unless he wants to be Strom Thurmond, or something like that. Yeah. So you never know. You never know. Stuff happens with people. You never know how this is going to go. Yeah, so I don't know. That'll be interesting to see. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you see a story about, did Spanberger go to some part of like Southern Virginia and get booed or something like that?
Right. She went to the Fiddlers contest at Galax, Virginia.
That's a Fiddlers contest. Yeah.
Yeah. And she got just hounded with booze. Here's the thing about that. It's like, like we want to spike the ball in that. And, every time Trump goes anywhere, like the crowd cheers and every leftard puts out a thing saying that they're, look, they all booed. And they can always find one guy in the audience who flipped the bird and booed, right? Because 60,000 people, one of them's going to do that, right? But I think that like politicians go to these things and, you go there to fiddle or listen to fiddling and, eat bad food and this and that and the other. You don't really go there for to see politicians, right? And they kind of slow up the proceedings. So I think, the natural sort of position is going to be to boo them, right? So I don't write a whole lot into it, but it does seem like her sort of popularity has crested pretty quickly. It doesn't really matter Virginia because she can't run for re-election, but if she had any aspirations for higher office, I think that's pretty close to dead. Like she's been shown to be sort of indecisive and not sure of herself.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I kind of saw some headline about it and didn't really delve into it. I remember it was a Fiddlers thing, and the question from my end at this point, without knowing anything else, is that have other governors done the same thing? Is she just following some tradition? What kind of reception have they gotten, or did her people completely misread things and not do their homework and realize that going into this convention, this conference or this contest, whatever the thing is, that this was not a place that they would be welcome at, that
right.
that it's in a part of Virginia that's very conservative or things like that.
Right. Virginia has some of the reddest counties in the country. They have some like 85, 90% red counties. So like if you go the wrong one, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think there probably was a time in our history where politicians of all stripes could go into places where they didn't necessarily have a lot of votes, but still get polite applause or whatever, and be respected. But we're pretty polarized these days. I mean, people pretty much let their feelings out. It's like, If they didn't vote
Right.
for you and they don't like you and your policies, they're going to let you know now. People
Yeah.
are not
And
holding back.
it's like, when Trump does these things and they claim he got booed, yeah, they can always find somebody. But when you're listening to the crowd, you don't really hear a bunch of booing, right? But this, nobody was doing anything other than booing. There was no one there to cheer for her. So, I mean, she just got booed relentlessly. It had to be uncomfortable for her.
Yeah, I don't. I tend to say on the surface, it seems like some kind of political miscalculation.
Yeah, and handler's not doing the job.
But as you said, it's a one-term thing in Virginia, so the popularity thing doesn't really matter in the one extent. But on the other hand, if you're trying to use the office of governor to launch yourself into a higher profile office, you definitely need to do that. I mean, I saw something that Glenn Youngkin is jumping into, school choice. Good.
Yeah.
Good for him. That's a good cause to take up. There are a lot of people who really will take that up, especially under the Trump administration, with their efforts to push, forward better education for everyone. This is a good thing to get behind on, and and hold the public school teachers accountable. So that's a good thing, and that can help if he does it right. That helps raise his profile in case he does want to do something.
Yeah, he's
particularly
also going
post
around
Trump.
the country campaigning with people, so
Yeah,
giving them money. So he's laying some tracks.
yeah. So that's good. We may hear more from Glenn Youngkin. I have this feeling that that a guy like Glenn Youngkin will become he'll look for something particularly post Trump. That type of thing. Wait for that to go behind. Even if there's still the MAGA movement, without Trump in office, it creates a different dynamic, and I think he would try to find that avenue, that path that he wants.
Yeah.
For everything. So there was a clip that I happened to see as I was looking around for stuff, and what's that guy? It's Scott Jennings of CNN, right? And he was on with Donna Brazile, and the clip that I saw had, she's talking about growing pains for the Democratic Party relating to the DSA, and then basically saying, well, it's kind of like the Tea Party and the MAGA movement. I mean, Jennings ripped her and just tore her up for that and everything, which is what he's really good at. But it's like, yeah, no, the DSA, you can't compare that to the Tea Party or the MAGA movement. Did those give the Republican Party growing pains? Depends upon how you look at it. The Tea Party was infused Republican Party with a lot of enthusiasm, brought a lot of people. We had some sketchy candidates, but it brought a lot of people, into the movement as such. And MAGA brought a lot of people, Trump and MAGA. I mean, yes, there were issues, but they're nowhere. There's no comparison to what the socialists are doing to the Democratic Party at all. This is completely different. So it's like, yeah, Donna, that's like you got this all wrong.
Right. Yeah. So like they're talking about, their platform. Their platform is eliminate the Supreme Court, eliminate the presidency, eliminate the Senate, run the whole country through the House of Representatives, and grow the House of Representatives to 620 seats or whatever it is. Which is, I mean, I'm sure that China and Russia and all our other adversaries would be really excited about that idea, right? Because it would destroy America. And I think that's their intent, is to destroy America. I think that's pretty clear. But yeah, they, so they have all these things working against them. And the Tea Party was never that. The Tea Party was an addition to the Republican Party, right? The Tea Party was saying, hey, Republican Party, do the things you've always actually promised to do, right? Really actually lower the taxes, reduce the rates, cut immigration. Really actually do those things instead of just talking about them and getting on our vote. The regular Democrat Party, they've been for some nutty stuff, but they haven't been for cut the Senate, cut the White House, cut SCOTUS, run everything through the House of Representatives. They've never said crazy things like that until now. And now they have to pretend that is sort of adjacent to what they do and think and want, right? You have the guy El Sayed in Michigan comes out and says, the first thing I want to do is make, your boy Van Hollen the majority leader, and then Schumer comes out the next day and endorses him, right? The guy who said he should be overthrown as majority leader because they don't really have any choice. It's like, don't be the one that, you got to be the second slowest wildebeest, right? You got to, the slowest wildebeest is going to get eaten. So that's basically where they are as a party. And, and no known principles or ideals, right? It's gone way past take our money and give it to the immigrants or whatever. It's much more than that. And they are now bound to stances, to policy planks that can't sell, like, sex change for, prisoners, for, illegal alien prisoners should be able to get free sex change operations in prison. How can that be part of your pitch? And one more thing, folks, and you say that, right? And they're all like, no, not my money, not with mine, So, but they're trapped, right? They're in this thing with these people. They're in this thing with these people about the, welfare and so forth, right? Because you have some of them saying, okay, you have all these people mooching that aren't Americans. Why did you let them in? Well, we gotta let them in, well, no, you don't, so they have all these little internecine things, and we have some too now. We have this, the sort of Candace Owens, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, rump thing of the party, but there's very little support for that. It's the same 10 or 11% that voted for Ron DeSantis in the primaries when Trump was getting 51%, and they're not a political force, and they're not even trying to be. They're not even trying to, have a coherent platform that you could get behind or oppose or whatever. So it's a totally different, nice try, Donna, but that's not it.
Yeah, look, I mean, politics, internecine warfare, particularly with the Republican Party, this is nothing new. Okay, I mean, right. I've seen this virtually all my life, and whether it's on either a smaller scale or a larger scale, it is just part and parcel of what happens. The more people you have in a room, the more people trying to do things, the more disagreements you wind up getting. I use my own central committee as an example. When I was on there, I spent about a dozen years there, with a 40 when it was at full strength, which was not very often. Usually we were just below full strength, but full strength meant 48 members. The chairman had the most difficult job of trying to herd those people into a position so that they could get things done. That was very, very difficult because there were factions within those 48 that made it hard for them to get certain things done. Multiply that to 217, 218, 219, whatever the number may be at any given time, 213, Republican House members. You can unify them on certain things to get a vote through, but a lot of them will do so begrudgingly, and others will just outright say no, and then you're not going to get parts of your agenda through. And so this is to me, I've always felt that they're much less unified than the Democrats, which seem to be like a bunch of lemmings, and they're like, "You want that? Sure, fine, we'll go for that," and we'll vote for that, blindly, and they don't really care. Democrats, I mean, Republicans, I think we have this because a lot of them, they do think. You don't have to agree with all of them. You don't have to agree with the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Tucker Carlsons, the Candace Owens, because I certainly don't at this point. But they do have their own brain, and they do think, and they do bring up points, and they're not necessarily following the crowd. The Democrats, to me, just follow the crowd and just like, this is what we're going to do.
We think they feel.
Right.
And, and it sounds like that sounds like a criticism of them. You actually need both, right? And so you don't really want government to not feel, because like the tax dollars that go into it, America is speaking on some matters, right? But we give that money to the government and say, okay, government, do some things with it that we as a society want done. Like, we do not want old people eating from a can, right? So everyone agrees, let's give the old people a little bit of money. There should be some kind of public pension. Is public pension a good idea from a conservative policy standpoint? Heck no, right? It's debilitatingly expensive and poorly administered and, dangerous to our future, right? At this point, it's way out of balance and, it's a problem. But, no one is seriously saying nix Social Security, like get it into some kind of private accounts or whatever. That's even a hard idea to sell. It makes a lot of sense. Be better for the government, be better for the people. But, it runs into a wall because, even people on our side say, we do not want grandma eating from a can out of the trash can, right? We don't want her going through the dumpster, right? We don't care. You're going to take some tax and you're going to do whatever, but we don't want that to happen, right? So, we think about some of their stuff. Like it's not, the other thing is like, and this is getting to be an increasingly big part of the divide in the country. If you're a left winger, you pretty much only see left wing news, right? I am all the time saying things to people that are obvious news stories, that there have been multiple news stories about it and the reaction to it and the policy changes that result from it. And they don't even know it happened because they don't see our side of anything. It's like the Fauci, this has got to be my MRC minute, but one of the things MRC has done is they go through and they say, okay, how much time did they spend on Graham Plattner, right? The guy in Maine. He had, beaten up multiple women. He was, gross stuff he put in his social media feeds. He had a Nazi tattoo on his chest, and he got 72% of the vote in the primary, right? So, there was some weirdness that people heard about that we knew about, right? That we on the other side knew all about. But the people voting in the Democrat primary in Maine did not. And when they did find out, they're like, oh no, we need a new candidate, right? And so they changed out the candidate. They didn't spend any time talking about El Sayed and all that. He backs a guy who says we deserve 9/11. It's our fault, right? That's like his buddy. No talk about that, right? No, they just don't discuss it. They're just like the Fauci. They have Fauci caught red-handed, right, and doing a lot of stuff that he shouldn't have been doing. So the media just says, "Oh, he invented the vaccine, saved millions." What are you guys talking about, right? Because they don't tell their people these things, right? So all the left is coming out saying, "Why are y'all being so mean to Fauci?" It's because they do not have the information to understand why we're angry with Fauci, right? They didn't see those stories. You saw them, I saw them, but the whole left is walled off from seeing those stories, right? We see their news and our news. They don't see our news, right? Which is creating a whole different like policy dichotomy in the country because half the population is not getting half the story.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good points there. So we'll keep moving along here. We got a few more things I want to hit here before we wrap up. So there was a story about President Trump kind of having a big getting on Air Force One and then getting off of Air Force One, and nobody knew about it. That he basically, I guess he just walked up in and then walked right through the galley or whatever and into the food service container thing and then off to another plane for his safety. There had been some apparently credible threats. This is an interesting story, and I had really not thought about the threats, again that could happen there in the air, with Iran, at this point, maybe trying to shoot down. I mean, Air Force One has got to be the safest airplane in the world, but I guess you could still shoot it down. If you know where the heck it was, I guess. I don't know.
Well, so what this suggests to me is that the threat to that plane was not that it would be shot down from below. The threat to that plane was somebody on that plane. And that's why they didn't worry about the press being on the plane, because whoever was there to kill Trump was not there to kill the press, just Trump, right? So, and this person, whoever this person is made their deal with the devil or God or whoever, right? Because they know they're not getting off, your life ends one way or the other when you do this. You're either going to spend the rest of your life in prison or you're going to be killed trying to do this, right? So So somebody on that plane had evil intent for Trump. Now, how do you get on that plane and they've identified this about you? Who was able to get on the Air Force One, but but was involved enough with this to draw their attention and prompted this move, right? So, there's people. I mean, they're getting closer to having. They're trying to get people on the inside of Trump's detail and so forth who are willing to do him harm. It's kind of always been one of their tricks, right? Is try to get someone close to him to betray him, or to put someone close to him whose job is to betray him. So that's just kind of another attempt at that. We need to know who this was, what this threat was, who's involved, because I bet you're going to find that there's the Iranians and working with domestic political enemies.
Well, I mean that sounds like a Hollywood movie script at this point. But I mean, I'd be very curious to see. I mean, to see if they, for them to go through the manifest and everything like this, and see who was on the plane and make sure that everybody had been properly vetted and security, and make sure that there was no threat. But it'll at the very least, it might just make they might double check their security procedures, among other things, and they're probably going to want to know about their intelligence procedures too. That even if it was a threat that they were going to try to fire a missile at it or whatever, how were they going to know exactly how and when this plane, where it was going to be, what was the flight plan, the flight path, all these kinds of things. So there's still more yet that we need to learn about this. But Trump was like, I just follow what they tell me. They told us,
that's the thing, is the left is on there. Well, he's a coward and he let all those people die. He didn't care. It's like, well, I think he, when these things start happening, I think he just does what they tell him to do. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, you follow what they tell you to do. I mean, that's why you have security detail. That's why you have all this level of, they're supposed to make sure that you stay safe. It doesn't mean that somebody can't betray you, but in general, I mean, they're supposed to keep you safe. So
right, and he's the priority, not the press.
Yeah. Oh yeah, by far. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So then there's another story. Just as we go, a couple brief things here. University of Michigan, their College of Literature, Science, and the Arts, they're not going to give letter grades on they'll not get letter grades to the freshman students because to help them with their mental health. Now, I guess that if there's a when it can show up on a transcript, but otherwise they get a pass fail or something like that, and they can get a credit for the class. But initially they don't get a letter grade, so that they're not getting all uptight about this, and it's like, really, I mean, what are, I understand. I mean, mental health, there is kind of a crisis in the United States to a degree, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is it. I mean, you are trying to enter the real world, please. It's like, this is your answer, is that you're going to shield them from grades because it might hurt their mental health. And
so we had a conversation about like, I got two kids in that window right now, right? And so we had a conversation about what is really the point of a college education, right? What are you really doing there? Because like Marty's majoring in kinesiology. It's unlikely that Marty is really going to spend 40 years studying human movement, right? He's going to use that to do other things. That's going to be part of his skill set, but not really all of it. It's not like a doctor where you go and you learn to be a doctor. It's not a full preparation for a career, but it is a credible one. It gives you a scientific background where you can go into multiple other jobs. Okay, so what are we doing here? One, we're exposing him to stuff, but the main thing we're doing is they are proving that he has the wherewithal to handle this pressure. Boy, I got to get this report in by tomorrow morning at 9:00, or I'm going to make an F in this class. So therefore, it's 2 a.m. and I've got 3 hours of work to do. I'm going to be up till 5 today because I got to get my stuff done. So now I'm going to learn from that I don't like those 5 o'clock dealios. So I'm going to prepare my work ahead of time, and so like, I may have something to do the last day, but it's not overwhelming, right? Because I want to even out my workload and not have these crisis periods. That's how you train for that, is because of the pressure put on you by grades, by A versus F, rather than just pass fail. You're and it's the same as the whole welfare. It's the same logic. You're not helping people when you lower expectations. When you say it's okay to be slop, you'll get slop, right? If you say it's not okay to get slop, they'll stop giving it to you, right? It's like people respond to incentives.
Why are we lowering the bar?
Right. Why are we lowering the bar? Why on earth? Because you want that pressure put on you to not just pass, but to make a good grade, right? You want them to face that pressure and learn how to deal with it, right? Or learn that they can't deal with it and go somewhere else and quit wasting their parents' money and getting student loans they can't pay off when they're not capable or really willing to do college work.
Well, the other thing too about it is this is the College of Literature, Science, and Arts. Okay, I don't know how much pressure there is in that school, but this is not finance. This is not science. This is not where they're. I mean, not high level science. I don't know what kind of science. Maybe it is, if it's chemistry or physics or something like that, I can understand a little bit of that. But I mean, like finance, the thing that pops into my head is just like you want to go work on Wall Street. That is a high pressure cooker situation. Go into trading desks and things like this. You can't tell your boss when you have to get hired and you fail to meet this deadline. It's like, I need a mental health day, please. I can't. And so, can I get the report in like a couple days later? They're like, no.
Yeah.
It's like, you're fired. You can't do that. He's like, we're on. We work on a very tight, timeline, deadline. Stuff happens like this, and you cannot waste a second. And you can't tell me I need a mental health day, or I'm sorry, in college though, they just gave me a pass fail. I mean, don't we have something like that here at the company? Yeah, come on.
No, we don't.
By the way, we don't. Maybe you thought we did, but you're going to get a rude awakening. All right, a couple more. Another thing here, Mamdani. So he's been riding fairly high. They've been doing some short-term things, fixing potholes and stuff like that, taking some low-hanging fruit and stuff like that. And but he's run into a little bit of a problem with this pied-à-terre tax on all these homes because they rolled this out and they released all the potential homes that they're going to tax, and they have found that it was rife with errors. There are people there who are, lifelong New Yorkers. Even a Mamdani supporter is in this list. Yeah. So they've had the court halted it and they appealed. So it's kind of, I guess it's just kind of sitting there right now. And so as a result, his popularity has been ticking down a little bit on this. And he's, the free buses has got the whole, mass transit union or whatever. They're all upset about this. And because it's like, look, you're going to put free buses out there. This just makes no sense. So, there's some things that Mamdani will do that'll probably work in New York and he can get through there. But even his city council apparently is mad at him because he's nominating people for positions and not letting them know in advance, which the protocol in the past have been, let us know. Yeah. We want to like to vet them a little bit before the nomination goes public. Instead, Mamdani is just basically saying, I'm nominating XYZ. And these people are being caught flat-footed. So
that's colossally unprofessional.
Oh,
right? Everyone should know when you're going to appoint and who they are. And like, you do that first, right? You say, would you like this job? Well, yeah, I would. What's involved? And you tell them what's involved. And it's like, okay, tell us everything about you so we don't get embarrassed. Okay. And then we went through all your stuff, on March 5th, we will make the announcement, that you are nominated for whatever it is, so everybody's on, we're all reading from the same script on that. The idea that like people didn't know till he said it's ludicrous. They might not have any idea. They may not want to work for the city.
Yeah. Right. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that go on with that. All right. So as we hit the last couple of things here, Rest in peace to Ben Cooter Jones. I put this up here partly because I was a huge Dukes of Hazzard fan back in the day. I will admit to that. So Crazy Cooter was, and then you got to Congress, served what 2 terms,
Yeah.
and then left Congress,
From
and he
Iowa,
wound.
right?
Huh?
Wasn't
He
he
was
from
he. I think
Iowa?
he represented Georgia. I think.
Georgia, was it? Okay.
Yeah, and then but he retired to Washington, Virginia. So I get must be farmland, or I guess
That's
out
a
there. I
lot
don't.
of rich folks out there in
Yeah. So
Washington, that little area,
yeah. I mean,
Rappahannock
Katie
County.
Clear, but he was part of that. He was part of that old guard. I mean, he would not be welcome in today's Democratic Party. That's the thing. It's so. But anyway, either they retire, or we see them, they pass on like this. But just to kind of give a shout out to him, um, more for his TV career probably than his congressional career, but not too many Dukes of Hazzard's stars left there. I think we still got the main stars there, but
Yeah.
all the supporting cast now I think is slowly but surely dying off. Um, I do want to say an update on Joe Biden's health, mainly because it does hit closer to home for me, since I have prostate cancer as well. President Biden has his is in stage 4, and I didn't hit. I narrowly escaped that diagnosis, but I can understand what's going on there. He's, as his son is saying, that he's got because it's metastatic, and mine is metastatic, and his is spread to the bones. He's in a lot of pain. I don't know how much longer Joe's going to be able to hang on, because prostate cancer, even though it is a slow moving cancer, once it spreads outside the capsule, as they called it, and it gets into your bones, but it gets painful. There are at stage 4, there are limited treatments. I mean, and Joe's older, but I think I don't think we're going to see a lot of Joe. Going forward. I mean, I think he's going to find it harder and harder, if not near impossible, to get out in public and do anything. It's
I
just going
think
to be
that's right.
it's going to be just way too painful. So for all the criticism I would have heaped on Joe Biden in his time as president, I do wish him well as can be in this journey, because this is not going to be easy at all.
Yeah, my mom had cancer that spread to her bones, and it killed her. And
Yeah.
like the last 2 years of her life, I would not wish on my worst enemy.
Yeah, no, I think when cancer spreads to the bones, I mean, mine hit the spine. It's been, they hit it with radiation. They're fairly confident it's fine now. But I learned the other day. I'm like, I was reading something just about something else, and it just kind of popped up in there, and I'm like, so you're telling me now cholesterol can carry cancer cells to other parts of the body? Oh, okay. Well, that's not great, because there's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. I mean, you can't just shut off all cholesterol. You need it. I'm
A
like,
little skeptical of that claim anyway.
well, no. I mean, look. I mean, well, my thing was, to me, it was plausible, because it's like and there are people I know, that have had the prostate cancer, the gallbladder cancer, and then the next thing they know, things are going well, and then they go and they get scanned, and there's nodules and cancer in their lung, or it's gone to their brain. Well, where did that come from? I mean, I think part of the problem is that once you have a cancer cell in your body, trying to keep the cancer cells, either to kill them completely or to keep them localized, is hard.
Well, I will say this about that. So in the last year or two, they discovered, you have the vascular system, carrying blood throughout the body, and you have the immune system giving signals throughout the body, right? But there's appears to also be a third system that like works at the level of synapses, and so the nerve, it's basically the nerves themselves talking to each other, and they're just learning about that and how all it works. And I'm wondering if a lot of these things that have been attributed to cholesterol and whatnot are part of that. They're actually going on that third, pardon the pun, third rail.
Yeah, I mean, you and I aren't doctors and some sort
Right.
of, but modern medicine is amazing and what it continues to reveal and discover. So that I mean, the medication I'm on, the treatment I'm on, probably was virtually non-existent 20 or 30 years ago. So it's prolonging my life at this point and saving a lot of lives at this point. But uh, but everybody's body responds differently to every treatment, every medication. You, the doctors do their best, I think, to try to find the one that will say this should work for you. But if they see something on your tests and scans, then they'll alter course and everything like that. So anyway, and then finally, so Enos Freedom Cantor and Royce White. I don't know why Royce White got into this. Uh, I'm calling it, they declared for the LGBTQIABA draft because that's what that league is. There's a lot of people in there. Uh, I mean, it's
Hey,
royal.
you know
It's
what?
royal.
They deserve it. They have it coming. They didn't put it in the rules. They don't want to say, we're actual women only because they believe that would offend their crowd. Well, if that
Yeah.
offends your crowd, then you can deal with Enos Kantner. You can
Yeah.
guard him in the post, right? And it's like these people are like, well, it won't make that much difference. Yeah, it will. They'll dominate the league. And God help you if those guys end up on the same team.
Yeah.
They cut 20% of the women on their team and add 2 dudes in there and then stomp everybody. Like, what's the story going to be then? I actually think, sadly, that, I started thinking about this yesterday. I'm like, the WNBA is much closer to extinction than anyone realizes, right? They may not go extinct, but right now, a viable option is for the NBA to pull the plug, right? Because right now, it's all bad publicity for the NBA. All they hear is, you're sinking $40 million into all this hatred and these fights and clotheslining players, and the refs don't call fouls, right? I think, the first thing is, like, get you some refs, right? You have bad refs, replace them, right? Replace them with people who will call the game, who don't care about, racial politics and all that. You have 2 or 3 refs in there. They're absolutely racist. If a black person does it, they don't call it. If a white person does it, they call it. Right. And it's been proven. You can go watch the videos on, just type that into your search, and YouTube will serve up numerous examples of this. Right. The woman called that she let Clark get clothesline the other day and didn't call it, said no contact. And then the next time down the floor, Clark avoids fouling somebody, accidentally bumps into her a little. Then she lets her walk away like 3 or 4 steps. And then it's also, wow, I could call a technical on her. Technical. So it was the 8th technical. If you get 8 technicals, you have to miss a game. So the league rescinded the technical. They told her that one didn't really count, so you don't have to miss a game. So if the league is stepping in, the rules aren't rules, and the league has to step in and fix it for the refs. You got to get refs you can depend on, right? They clearly do not depend on or trust the people they have doing it now, and they shouldn't, because they're terrible.
Yeah, I mean they have to protect these stars. I mean, Caitlin Clark, she's got a target on her. I mean, they go after
Cunningham
her. I mean,
too.
yeah, and now Cunningham. I mean, that clotheslining the other day. I mean, that was horrible. I mean, and it's not the first time. It's not the first time that that player has done that. I mean, it's like,
right.
You've got to do something about this thuggery here.
Yeah, and Clark is like, I've never spoken a word to that girl. She has nothing
Yeah.
personal against me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, you got to stop this, or people aren't going to want to play in your league. It's dangerous.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So we count your previous comments as your MRC minute, and we'll wrap it up.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Thank you today for joining us again. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.